human infrastructure systems. So I'll be discussing two case studies, the first of which is Virgin Galactic. So Virgin Galactic is an American spaceflight company within the Virgin Group, which is owned by Richard Branson. It is developing commercial spacecrafts and aims to provide suborbital space flights to space tourists and suborbital launches for future spaceflight missions. So Virgin Galactic operates the reusable Spaceship Two spaceflight system, which consists of the White Knight 2 and the Spaceship Two. The Spaceship Two is the world's first passenger-carrying spaceship to be built by a private company and operated in commercial service. On the right, you can see what that ship looks like, along with a rendering of what they plan to make their interior like, and that's where the tourists and space travelers would sit within the aircraft. And so they are easier to launch than a traditional spaceship, which is why they've been so successful and pivotal in the commercial spaceflight realm. So they have the potential to reach anti-gravity within 5 minutes of breaking off its host plane. And by host plane, this spaceship will be attached to a traditional aircraft plane that takes off from a normal runway, and then once that plane reaches its cruising altitude, the spaceship will then break off of it, which will give it a lot easier accessibility to get into outer space. And that requires a lot less thrust and a lot less fuel than a traditional spacecraft, and also requires a lot less launch space. So the second case study is the Texas High-Speed Rail. So the Texas High-Speed Rail train will be the first truly high-speed train in Texas and the United States, connecting North Texas, Houston, and Brazos Valley in less than 80 minutes each way. It uses the safest, most accessible, and most efficient and environmentally friendly mass transportation system in the world today. It is projected to be fully operational by the year 2026 with a 60 to 70 minute transit time between Houston and the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Currently, there are 3 proposed stations, so Houston, Dallas, and then Brazos Valley, Brazos County, which is right outside of Texas A&M, so convenient for us. The train will use the same technology as the bullet trains that are currently in Japan, and these can reach speeds of more than 200 miles an hour. This will allow mass amounts of people to commute across the major cities of Texas with ease. And so this is my prototype. My design would be to create a conveniently located multi-aircraft launch site at a central location between Houston and Dallas. It needs to be able to allow easy accessibility for large amounts of people. It also needs to include a biodome for protection from outside elements if needed. It needs to be built at a high enough elevation to protect from potential floods, and it needs to include a large-scale accommodations in case people need to stay long periods of time. And for my site criteria, it needs to be close and have direct access from the proposed high-speed rail system that's going to be put in Texas. It needs to also be close up to the major Texas highways, such as I-45 North, so that people can also drive their own personal cars if they don't have access to the high-speed rail. And the site that I chose is right outside of Palestine, Texas, and in between that and I-45, which is almost a direct middle spot between Houston and Dallas, so that people from each city can get there almost around the same time. And as you can see in these pictures, on the top one you can see the bullet train has direct access there, and on the bottom you can see that it needs to have a biodome outside, and then also some accommodations, and then a large enough runway for that multiple spacecrafts can take off within the same hour to allow the most amount of people possible to get to and from space. And that is my project.